Russia's war in Ukraine has reached space. Wonder what this means for the future of space exploration? Keep watching to find out. 2022 has been full of controversial news. COVID-19, the death of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, high inflation rates, Elon Musk buying Twitter, and Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. But the most ominous event so far is the invasion of Russian forces into Ukraine. The war's effects have rippled across the globe, and the war has now reached space as well. Before we can dive into the conflict in space, we first need to cover what is already known about this war. Russia and Ukraine share a heritage way back since the year 882, when Kiev, Ukraine's current capital, was at the center of the first Slavic state, Kievan Rus, which is the birthplace of both countries. Russian President Vladimir Putin has been using this as a symbol for showing that Russians and Ukrainians are one people. Ukraine was not given the opportunity to stand alone as a country until the 1900s, as it was colonized and held captive by stronger empires, including the Russian Empire. Moreover, in 1922, Ukraine suffered from some of its greatest traumas when the Soviet Union was formed by the Marxist Vladimir Lenin. In 1929, Joseph Stalin took over from Lenin. Stalin caused a wide-scale famine all throughout Ukraine that resulted in the starvation and deaths of millions of Ukrainians. The Soviet Union held absolute control over Ukraine over the next decades until it collapsed in 1991. Ukraine declared independence and provided democracy for the first time in the country's history. Fast forward to 2008, 17 years after Ukraine's independence, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, invited Ukraine to join. But this was abruptly opposed by Putin, claiming Ukraine was not even a real nation-state. The Putin-led Russia launched its first aggression towards Ukraine in 2014 when it seized Crimea, a Ukrainian peninsula with a predominantly ethnic Russian population. This move caused an outrage globally and further soured the relationship of Russia with NATO and the United States. 8 years later, on February 22, 2022, Russia launched an attack on Ukraine, which initiated a full-scale invasion of the country. Working as a government servant for almost 47 years, Vladimir Putin has been vital to the country's growth in the past decades. Putin joined the KGB, Russia's main security agency, in 1975 and was appointed as an international affairs advisor in 1990. Putin steadily raised his popularity and reputation as an official and was later appointed as acting prime minister in 1999 by then-President Boris Yeltsin. In the same year, Yeltsin suddenly resigned from his position, which led Putin to become the acting president until 2000. Putin then officially ran for the presidency in 2000 and became president for the next 8 years. He ran for office once again in 2012 and is serving his fourth term as president up until today. Vladimir Putin's 22-year tenure as president of the largest country in the world has gained approval from most of his countrymen. In a poll conducted in early 2022, Putin gained an approval rating of 71%, his highest in recent years. But at the peak of the recent Russian invasion of Ukraine, Putin received backlash from various nations around the globe. Companies like McDonald's, TikTok, and Levi's have cut ties with Russia to put pressure on the president's recent actions. Putin remained immovable. He chose to retaliate and set his sights on space. What would have the most significant impact? Well, putting pressure on one of the most collaborative places in space, the International Space Station. The new chief of Roscosmos, Russia's space agency, revealed its plans for the International Space Station, which will reshape the space industry for the next decades. The International Space Station, or ISS, is one of the first and last standing examples of the partnership between Russia and the Western world. It is a laboratory station 386 kilometers (240 miles) above the Earth's surface. It aims to help humans understand how to live in space and has served as a laboratory since 1998. The US, along with Russia, are the pioneers of the idea of constructing this space laboratory. In 1998, Russia delivered the first component of the ISS with its Zarya mission, which kicked off the ISS mission. The start of the ISS was a big achievement for both nations, as they shared a history of racing one another for space achievements during the Soviet Union era. In 2000, Russian cosmonauts Yuri Gidzenko and Sergei Krikalev became the first crew to reside on the ISS alongside US astronaut Bill Shepard. It became what is now more than 20 years of continuous presence in space. In the span of 20 years, a lot of things happened on the ISS that contributed to our planet. Over 200 people have reached and stayed at the ISS. Various nations also joined the mandate of the laboratory in space, including Japan, Canada, and 11 member states of the European Space Agency. The union in the ISS also serves as a symbol of peace, as these nations are contributing to a single goal that resides outside our planet. But the symbol of peace is now shaking on its foundation, as rising international tensions following the invasion of Ukraine led to Roscosmos revealing that Russia is leaving the ISS after 2024. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has soured its relationship with the West and weakened its ties with the United States. US President Joe Biden released sanctions on Russia, including sanctions against Russia's space industry. Back in March, a month after Russia's invasion, then chief of Roscosmos, Dmitry Rogozin, warned the space industry that without their cooperation in the ISS, it would crash on American or European soil. However, the successor of Rogozin, Yuri Borisov, said that they are committed to the ISS, but only up until 2024. After that, things are uncertain. Will Russia continue to cooperate with the space laboratory or not? Russia's cooperation with the ISS is quite vital. Russia and the US both co-partnered in the creation of the ISS in 1998. The space station relies on Russian propulsion systems for periodic boosts to maintain its orbit, some 400 kilometers (250 miles) above sea level, while the US segment is responsible for electricity and life support systems. Although the United States is currently in the process of creating independent propulsion systems, the ISS right now is dependent on Russia's propulsion systems, which are being handled in Moscow. If Russia leaves in 2024 along with its propulsion systems, the ISS will indeed plummet if the US can't finish its own. The ISS will likely stop operating by 2028 or 2030. Will that mark the end of international space collaboration with Russia? Russia already hinted at their next big move in space. After decades of collaboration with other nations on space expeditions, Russia has unveiled their next plans, and we are pretty shocked. In what is seen as retaliations against the sanctions imposed on the country, the head of Roscosmos announced that Russia will leave the ISS and create its very own space station after 2024. Yes, you heard it right. Russia will create its own space station, and they already found a name for it, the Russia Orbital Space Station, or ROS. The head of Roscosmos, Yuri Borisov, said in an interview that their main objective right now is to launch the space station's first module by 2028. Russian engineers finished their plans for this module space station back in 2020, which is planned to operate 450 kilometers (250 miles) above the surface. ROS has the capability to monitor the entire surface of the Earth, especially the Arctic region, which is strategically important for Russia. The station will mainly serve two important functions: giving Russia high-frequency observations from space and providing complex medical and physiological experiments in space. The Roscosmos space station is targeting the year 2026 for their first manned mission. Russia will be the second country with a space station of its own, with China being the only country to have a fully operational space station, which is expected to be fully completed at the end of 2022. International space collaboration is in danger with Russia's decision to leave the ISS. The ISS became one of the last standing cooperative relationships between Russia and the Western countries, and it might end in 2025. Russia's stance on leaving the ISS will also mark an end to almost 2.5 decades of space collaboration. With Russia now on its own again, this may be the start of a new era in the space industry. The creation of the Russian Orbital Space Station will chart a new course in space, as Russia is hinting at a collaboration with China. In 2021, the two countries have already agreed to jointly build a lunar base in the 2030s. Will a modern space race unfold right in front of us? Is it already happening? Will Russia and China become closer allies through collaboration in space? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.